What's up, music fam? When I made my last couple of videos, I had no idea it was going to go this far. I was kind of joking around with the title of the first one, Too R&B for Church, because the church literally told me I sounded too R&B. But that led to another video where I decided to explain why I stopped playing for churches. Well, that led to even more questions. So I realized that this is going to take a lot more videos because I have a long history with the church. This video will serve as part 2 of why I stopped playing for churches. And that's the 3rd episode of what will now be known as the Church Chronicles. And I'm back making another R&B beat for you. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. To explain why I stopped playing for churches, I think it might be easier to work backwards. So let me start by saying that I tried. God knows I tried to hang on to playing the keys in church. Even after I knew I should leave, I kept trying to find a good church. Or just one where I thought the pastor might have just been ignorant of the truth versus trying to deceive people. As a musician who had been used to getting paid to play for years, I tried to justify staying. But the longer I stayed, the worse it got. Every church I would get hired to play for got worse. Let me tell you about the last 4 churches I played for. So I interviewed for this church, and I met the pastor. By this point, I already knew not to get my hopes up, because I had been deceived by so many pastors. But like almost every other pastor I played for, he was so smooth with it. And he sold me his vision like a car salesman. Before I knew it, I found myself all in. I found myself putting in extra work to fix the church sound system, adding a required weekly musicians rehearsal, letting the church borrow some of my own personal PA equipment, and even taking on the responsibility of being the sound tech while also playing the keys and leading the band and being responsible for every other aspect of the music in the church. The pastor was thrilled to have the sound system sound the way it should for the first time ever, and also applauded the progress of the music department as a whole. He finally had a music department he could be proud of. Side note, this was a small storefront church with a vacant spot next door. The pastor dabbled in music production, and he had a dream of having a record label. He told me he was going to get the space next door to the church and put a studio there. He had already told me that after pastor's appreciation, he was going to use the money they gifted him to get the spot next door and buy a new car. I remember him talking about this often, and he said it with confidence. So pastor's appreciation was approaching. Well, I wanted to do something for him as the minister of music. I felt that the music department should do something for him. And even though it was a small church, they actually had a pretty strong praise team with a lot of potential. I had a song I'd been sitting on for a while that I thought would be perfect for them. So I decided to teach them that song, since that was part of my job anyway. Bring my laptop to the church and record them after we perfected it. Print it on CD, use my duplicator to make copies, and present the song to the pastor for Founders Day. All proceeds were to go to the church without me getting paid for any of my services or even recouping any of the money I put into it. Well, one of the young ladies on the praise team said she felt uncomfortable keeping secrets from the pastor, even though this was supposed to be a surprise for him. Let me note that this young lady was full of drama and often caused conflict. But the pastor really liked this young lady. Because of this, I went ahead and talked to him about the idea after rehearsal. He was really upset that I would even entertain the thought of doing something so absurd. I mean, what was I thinking, trying to do something for him? He said he was glad I told him about it, because if I would have followed through with that surprise, it wouldn't have been a good thing. His entire attitude towards me and my wife changed after that conversation. The vibe of the whole church seemed to be different towards my wife and me after that. Finally, it got so bad that one Sunday we walked in and things just felt completely different. I could feel things coming to a head. But I sat there and I played as if I didn't notice. That day, he preached a sermon to turn the whole church completely against us. He didn't call my name or my wife's name, but it was about us. Then, out of nowhere, he started complaining about the sound system. But nothing had changed. He had praised the adjustments I'd made to the sound system up until that point. He He literally fussed at me during the sermon. After that service, my wife and I finally decided to leave. But he texted me anyway that week and told me not to come back. So that's why I stopped playing for that church. Before he even texted me and told me not to come back, I had already gotten hired to play for another church. This church seemed a lot different. Where the previous church had more of a club vibe and sang "Whoop, there it is," their own gospel version, this new church held its services in a dark theater. They had coffee and donuts and were what they referred to as seeker-friendly. But beyond the new catchphrases, the CCM sounding gospel, the attempt at looking cool by wearing a suit with no tie, and the colorful branded signs, this pastor and his church were just like every other church I played for. But I had determined to just come in and do my job and go home. I made up my mind to not talk to the pastor or anyone else about any biblical discrepancies. My wife and I decided that this was just going to be my job. She decided to come along with me for moral support. So Christmas time was approaching. Everything was going well up until this point. I was coming in, doing my job, smiling and shaking hands, and even enjoying the fellowship, all while avoiding any controversial topics. Well, my wife and I don't celebrate Christmas. For those who do, okay. We don't say anything to anyone about their choice to celebrate it. But for biblical reasons, we choose not to. So we got to church the Sunday before Christmas, and the pastor decided to play Christmas trivia. Side note, a young lady had told him we didn't celebrate Christmas. She only knew because we declined a Christmas-related opportunity from her. The pastor divided everyone up into teams, including me. I tried to hide behind the keyboard. Because I had done so much research on Christmas over the years, my team won. But I was confused. Every question he asked supported not celebrating Christmas. He talked about Nimrod, the winter solstice, the fact that Jesus wasn't born around that time, and a lot of other things. And just when I thought he was about to say, "And this church is why I don't think we should celebrate Christmas anymore," he summed it all up by saying, "But we choose to celebrate Christmas because we still honor Jesus with it." But this is not why I stopped playing for this church. After that Sunday, things were not the same. My wife and I went on as if nothing happened and stuck to the plan of sticking this one out. I mean, it was just a job, right? Wrong. My time was coming to an end. The spiritual side of things started to reveal itself. See, the pastor's wife, the co-pastor, was a self-proclaimed prophetess. So after the following praise team rehearsal, I was just trying to pack up my stuff and dip. The pastor's wife said she wanted to talk to my wife and me. My heart sank. I already knew this was going to be my last time seeing any of these people. The end of my role at this church, and the end of my paycheck. She prophesied accurately just enough about our past for us to know that there was something spiritual about this. But it was wrong enough for us to know that she was a false prophet. It just felt extremely weird and creepy. She then asked us if there was anything that they were teaching that we disagreed with. I said, "Are you referring to Christmas?" She looked like she had gotten caught, and she confessed that the young lady came to her and told her that we didn't celebrate it. Remember, we never really had a conversation with that young lady about Christmas. We just declined an opportunity to be extras in a Christmas movie. That week, I was called and relieved of my services. So that's why I stopped playing for that church. Because Nigerian scams have become a big thing, I think I should probably note that this next church was a Nigerian church. Sorry to my Nigerian brothers and sisters, because I know I have a lot of Nigerian followers on Facebook, but I just happened to be scammed by a Nigerian church. This story is pretty simple. They literally just didn't pay me. We agreed on a weekly salary. I played for rehearsal and Sunday service. I even stayed and waited while they had a second virtual service with their home church in Nigeria. After that service, the person who was responsible for paying me approached me and thanked me. By the time she said, "See you at rehearsal," and said nothing about paying me. I knew she was about to try to scam me. I asked her about my payment, and she gave me some kind of excuse. I forget what it was. She asked me if she could cash out me. Okay, so I know I shouldn't leave without my payment. But I didn't want to make a scene in church, and I didn't want to argue with a woman. So no matter how many times I contacted her for my payment, I still, to this day, have not been paid. Can you believe she actually thought I was coming back the next Sunday? That was 7 years ago. I can laugh about it now, but at the time, my wife and I were going through a very rough pregnancy. So obviously, that's why I stopped playing for that church. I interviewed for another church. I looked around and they had a really nice setup. Again, the pastor seemed very friendly, though just maybe a little sketchy. But maybe I was just being paranoid. I mean, all these churches are within months of each other. But they offered me the job and I accepted. I thought this situation seemed really simple and straightforward. And it was. It wasn't too demanding at all. Just get with a young lady every week to decide what songs to learn. She really didn't even care to rehearse because she was too busy. And there was no praise team or choir to have to deal with different personalities. What could go wrong, right? Well, after a few weeks of me playing, getting my check, and going home, I was starting to think this might just be the one. Finally. So I deposited my check, as usual. It bounced like a basketball. And I was charged a fee. So I contacted the pastor to let him know as kindly as possible. He acted like I was wrong for trying to cash the check so soon. He asked me to try it again on a certain day. So I waited until that day and gave it an extra day. This time I went to the bank the check was written from, just in case, because I didn't want another fee. They couldn't cash it because the funds were unavailable again. I let the pastor know, and I kind of felt sorry for him because he seemed embarrassed. But by this time I had a new baby and 3 other kids. I couldn't afford to not get paid. So he promised me that the money would be available on a certain day. I went to the bank again, and guess what? Yep, funds unavailable. I tried to work with him. I even went and played another Sunday. If my memory serves me correctly, I think he paid me in cash this time. He told me to cash the previous check yet again on a certain day. So I tried one more time and it didn't clear. I texted him and let him know. That Sunday, I just stayed home. I was tired. I mean, did he really expect me to come and play after I still hadn't gotten paid? The answer is yes. He expected me to come and play after I still hadn't gotten paid. That was 2016. To this day, I still haven't gotten paid. This is why I stopped playing for that church. Can you believe I played for one more church after that? But I'm not quite ready to tell that story. But that one would be my last attempt at relying on being a church musician to support my family. After that, I went and worked at a chemical plant for almost 5 years. And I would rather breathe in all those chemicals at a chemical plant for another 5 years than to play for another church. Just to remind you, this is the only way I stopped playing for these 4 churches, marking the end of my days as a church musician. My wife did remind me that there was another church that I didn't mention. But these things all happened within the same year. However, before these churches, I played for other churches for 18 years. I have multiple stories of theft by deception and theft by taking. Multiple stories of pastors and ministers criminally taking advantage of young girls and boys. And stories of seeing pastors selling illegal substances, just to name a few. I really could go on and on. And these are all things I know for myself, not things someone told me. I wanted to start off easy with this video, but it gets worse. I could live a very easy life by not talking about these things and never make any enemies. But how selfish would I be? How could I say I have love in my heart, but watch people go in that same direction to get hurt and not say anything? So I need to share what I've been through and what I've seen so that maybe someone won't have to go through it. Or for those who are in that bondage, I want to tell you that the Bible actually says you can and should in many cases leave, or at the very least confront the ones causing the abuse. Also, there might be some pastors trying to do the right thing but just might be making some mistakes. And to those pastors who are intentionally hurting people for your own gain, or for those who support those pastors. Just know that God sees you, and there's a community of believers who sees you too. I hope you can hear my heart and understand that I'm coming from a genuine place. Yes, I've been hurt, but I'm not lashing out. I healed from the hurt years ago. I'm speaking the truth about my experiences, and I'm truly speaking in love. Still to this day, I have people I was raised around who I can't talk to because of the damage that was done by church. I miss and love these people, so I'm certainly not bashing them or the church. My hope is that these videos can at least get the conversation started, because there's a huge barrier, a wall, between those in church and those who have been labeled as having church hurt. This is a way to prevent us from having conversations that could reveal things church leadership doesn't want revealed, things that need to be talked about. But the poor treatment, the deception, and the getting scammed out of money are nothing compared to the things I'm going to describe in the next video. You wouldn't believe how many pastors are purposely using the Bible to not just scam musicians, but to scam the church members out of money every week. This topic was an easy one to digest, but I hope you can handle the truth in the next episode of the Church Chronicles. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, you all be blessed.